Here is an uncomfortable reality that rarely gets discussed. In spite of widespread smoking, ongoing food rationing, and medical practices that would alarm us today, people living in post-war Britain were, on the whole, healthier than we are now. Obesity was almost non-existent. Diabetes appeared infrequently. Rates of heart disease were only a small fraction of what they are today. So what were they doing correctly? The answer is neither complex nor mysterious. In fact, it is slightly humiliating. Everything that kept them healthy is something we have intentionally abandoned. What follows are 13 long-forgotten habits that made old Britain far healthier than modern Britain. If you grew up when resilience came before comfort, this story will feel familiar. What follows is not nostalgia, but a look at a childhood shaped by necessity, where strength was learned early and life offered no safety nets. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel to explore the stories, conflicts, and secrets that shaped 20th century Britannia. Your subscription helps us keep bringing more content like this. Before automobiles dominated everyday life, walking was simply the default way to get anywhere. During the 1950s, most households did not own a car. Even families who could afford one often reserved it for rare or special outings. As a result, walking was embedded into daily routines in ways that feel almost unimaginable today. Children walked to school. Mothers walked to local shops. Fathers walked to work. The average housewife covered around 5.5 miles on foot every single day, simply completing her normal tasks. This was not exercise, and nobody labeled it as such. It was just how life worked. If you needed bread, you walked to the baker. If you wanted meat, you walked to the butcher. Visiting relatives meant walking across town. The idea of driving half a mile to buy milk would have seemed completely absurd. Bicycles were equally common, not as fitness accessories but as essential transportation. Men rode to factories wearing suits and caps. Women cycled to offices in dresses. Children pedaled to school with satchels on their backs. Even shop deliveries were often made by bike. Cycle racks were everywhere, at schools, workplaces, and shopping areas, because everyone needed somewhere to leave them. The bicycle was not a lifestyle statement. It was a necessity when buses were unreliable and cars were far beyond most wages. A man cycling 5 miles to work and 5 miles home burned a huge number of calories without giving it a second thought. By the late 1950s, as cars became more affordable, cycling rapidly declined. Those 20,000 daily pedal strokes were replaced by sitting still in traffic. If you examine antique dinnerware, something immediately stands out. The plates are remarkably small. Standard dinner plates in the 1950s measured roughly 8 or 9 inches across. Today, they are closer to 11 or 12 inches. That difference sounds minor, but the surface area almost doubles. Human psychology does the rest. People tend to fill their plates. A portion that looked generous on a mid-century plate appears tiny on a modern one. Portion sizes themselves tell the same story. A burger in the 50s weighed around 4 ounces. Today, it weighs 12. Soft drinks grew from 7 ounces to 32. French fries increased from 2.5 ounces to nearly 7. Nobody consciously chose to eat 3 times more. Plates simply grew larger, and we filled them without thinking. Convenience food was not an option. Ready meals did not exist. In the 1950s, only about 10% of households owned a refrigerator. Freezers were almost unheard of, and microwaves were decades away. Every meal had to be made from fresh ingredients purchased that day or the day before. There was no reheating of frozen lasagna, no ordering takeaway on a phone, no grabbing packaged food at a petrol station. The average housewife spent hours each day cooking, peeling vegetables, preparing meat, and making pastry from scratch. Meals were simple and far less calorie-dense because rich, elaborate dishes required time and money most families did not have. A typical dinner consisted of meat, potatoes, and vegetables, nothing more. That accidental simplicity kept people slim. Snacking barely existed as a concept. You ate breakfast, dinner, and tea, perhaps with a biscuit alongside a mid-morning cup of tea. That was it. Eating constantly throughout the day, keeping drawers full of crisps, or consuming food out of boredom rather than hunger was not part of everyday life. Some of this was cultural, as snacking was seen as crude and lacking self-control. Some of it was practical, since food cost money and wasting it made no sense. Today, the average person eats 5 or 6 times a day, and entire supermarket aisles are devoted to snack foods that did not exist 60 years ago. Crisps were an occasional treat. Chocolate bars marked special moments. The calories we now consume purely from snacks would have shocked our grandparents. Here is a statistic that feels almost unbelievable. Housework in the 1950s required 57 hours per week. Today, it takes roughly 2. Without washing machines, laundry meant hours of scrubbing, wringing, and hanging clothes. Without vacuum cleaners, carpets were beaten by hand. Without dishwashers, every plate was washed in the sink. Without central heating, fires had to be built, coal carried, and ashes cleared. The average housewife took around 15,000 steps per day simply keeping the household running, which equals about 5.5 miles of walking indoors. Modern appliances gave us back those 55 hours, but they also removed the physical effort that came with them. The housewife of 1955 burned calories constantly. Her granddaughter burns almost none performing the same chores. Central heating transformed daily life, and not entirely for the better. In the 50s and 60s, most British homes lacked it entirely. You heated the front room with a fire, and that was all. Bedrooms were icy. Bathrooms were freezing. On winter mornings, you could see your breath indoors. Hot water bottles were essential. The human body burns calories to stay warm, and living in cold environments encouraged that process. Modern homes maintain constant warmth, meaning our metabolism no longer works to regulate temperature. Research suggests rising indoor temperatures have contributed significantly to obesity. Our ancestors endured winter chills and stayed lean. We turn up the thermostat and wonder why weight increases. Elevators existed, but most people avoided them. Homes had stairs. Shops had stairs. Offices had stairs. Unless you were elderly or disabled, you climbed them. Taking a lift instead of stairs was seen as lazy, even embarrassing. People in the 50s climbed far more stairs daily than we do now. Stair climbing strengthens legs, hearts, and lungs, burns calories, and maintains mobility into old age. We replaced stairs with escalators and lifts, then paid for gym memberships to simulate the movement on machines. The irony would be amusing if it were not so bleak. Meals were eaten at tables, with everyone present. Many households did not own a television, so eating in front of screens was impossible. Meals did not happen in bedrooms, on sofas, or while walking down the street. Eating was an event. The family gathered, food was served, and everyone ate together. When the meal ended, eating stopped. Research consistently shows that eating socially leads to lower calorie intake than eating alone. Screens encourage mindless consumption. Structured meals create a clear beginning and end, which naturally limits overeating. That structure has been replaced by constant grazing in front of streaming platforms. People consumed sugar, but they were fully aware of it. If you wanted something sweet, you added sugar to tea or spread jam on bread. Sugar was visible and measurable. Today, roughly 2/3 of the sugar we eat is hidden in processed food. Bread contains sugar. Pasta sauce contains sugar. Yogurt contains sugar. Even savory foods include it. We consume far more sugar than previous generations while believing we eat less. The food industry learned that sugar increases appeal and added it everywhere. A modern ready meal often contains more sugar than a dessert from the 1950s. This change happened quietly, without public consent. Food was seasonal and local. You ate what was available. Strawberries appeared in summer and disappeared afterward. Apples arrived in autumn. Brussels sprouts belonged to Christmas. Eating produce flown across the world year-round was unthinkable. Diets naturally changed with the seasons, bringing varied nutrients. Local food was fresher, higher in nutrients, and spoiled quickly, which discouraged overeating. You bought only what you needed for today, knowing tomorrow it would no longer be fresh. Meat was expensive, which made the Sunday roast special. Working-class families in the 50s ate far less meat than we do now. Meals relied on vegetables, potatoes, oats, and pulses, with meat appearing in small portions stretched by gravy. Eating meat daily would have seemed wasteful. This near-vegetarian diet turned out to be healthier than modern meat-heavy consumption. Red meat intake peaked in the 1960s, followed closely by rising obesity. Our grandparents ate meat once or twice a week and stayed lean. We eat it twice a day and ask what went wrong. People went to bed when it got dark because there was little else to do. Without multiple televisions, computers, or smartphones, evenings were quiet. You listened to the radio, read briefly, and went to sleep. Children were in bed by 7 or 8. Adults followed by 10. Staying up past midnight scrolling endlessly would have seemed bizarre. Sleep plays a crucial role in weight regulation. Lack of sleep disrupts hunger hormones, causing people to eat more and move less. Previous generations slept 8 or 9 hours effortlessly. We average 6 or 7 and compensate with caffeine and sugar. 13 habits. None of them complex. Walk more. Cycle when possible. Eat smaller portions on smaller plates. Cook from scratch. Avoid snacking. Do physical work. Tolerate a little cold. Take the stairs. Eat with others. Watch for hidden sugar. Eat seasonally. Reduce meat. Sleep properly. Beyond the individual habits, what truly defined post-war Britain was how movement and restraint were built into daily life without intention. Health was not a goal people chased, it was a byproduct of necessity. Nobody counted steps, tracked calories, or followed wellness trends. Bodies adapted naturally to routines shaped by limited resources, shared spaces, and slower rhythms. In many ways, health emerged not from discipline, but from the absence of excess. There was also a psychological difference that is easy to overlook. Food was respected because it was earned. Effort went into acquiring it, preparing it, and preserving it. That effort created boundaries. When something takes time and labor, you value it differently. Modern abundance removed those boundaries, and with them went the natural pauses that once told people when to stop eating or rest. Community played a subtle but powerful role as well. People lived closer together, shopped locally, and interacted constantly. Loneliness, which today is linked to poor health and overeating, was harder to come by. Meals were shared, routines were visible, and behavior was shaped by social norms. When everyone around you walked, climbed stairs, and ate at set times, those behaviors felt normal rather than virtuous. None of this means the past was ideal or comfortable. Life was harder, colder, and more physically demanding. But that hardship unintentionally protected people from many modern illnesses. As comfort increased, effort decreased, and health quietly eroded. The tragedy is not that we advanced, but that we advanced without understanding what we were losing. The lesson is not to reject modern life, but to recognize which old constraints quietly served us well. Health did not vanish overnight. It faded as small habits disappeared one by one, replaced by convenience, abundance, and constant stimulation. Looking back is not about nostalgia. It is about remembering that sometimes the simplest ways of living were doing more for us than we ever realized. Another crucial element was time itself. Post-war life moved at a slower, more predictable pace. Shops closed early, Sundays were quiet, and very little operated around the clock. This natural slowing of life reduced constant stimulation and stress. Without endless notifications, late-night entertainment, or 24-hour consumption, the body and mind were given regular opportunities to rest. Chronic stress, now recognized as a major contributor to modern illness, was present in different forms then, but it did not pulse continuously through every waking moment. Physical effort was also embedded into dignity and self-worth. Being active was not framed as self-improvement, but as responsibility. Carrying coal, scrubbing floors, pushing prams, and hauling groceries were simply part of being useful. Today, physical effort is often outsourced or mechanized, while movement must be deliberately scheduled and motivated. The shift from necessary exertion to optional exercise changed how often bodies actually move. Food scarcity also shaped metabolism in ways we are only beginning to understand. Regular periods between meals allowed insulin levels to fall naturally. Hunger was familiar but not frightening. People ate when it was time to eat, not when a craving appeared. This rhythm gave the body clear signals, something modern constant eating disrupts. What we now label as intermittent fasting was once just normal daily life. Children absorbed these patterns without instruction. They walked, climbed, carried, and played outdoors for hours because that was the environment available to them. Their energy was spent physically rather than stored. Modern childhood, structured around sitting, screens, and supervision, removed many of those outlets. The difference shows decades later in adult health statistics. Perhaps most importantly, comparison was limited. People compared themselves to neighbors, not to curated images of strangers. Body image anxieties existed, but they were not amplified by advertising algorithms and social media feeds. Without constant pressure to consume, improve, or indulge, there was less emotional eating and fewer compensatory behaviors tied to stress or inadequacy. The uncomfortable truth is that modern convenience solved many problems while quietly creating new ones. We engineered effort out of life without replacing its physiological benefits. We added comfort without understanding its metabolic cost. The past was not healthier because people were wiser, but because systems enforced balance by default. Reintroducing even fragments of that balance may matter far more than the latest health trend or diet ever could. If this story resonates, share it with someone who lived it, or with someone who didn't. Understanding where that resilience came from helps connect generations shaped by very different worlds.